The movie begins as a businesswoman, Sophia, and her husband, Alex, arrive at the latter's family farmhouse in a faraway town. Soon afterward, Mr. Brooks, the caretaker, appears and takes their luggage indoors. It is revealed that Alex has been through some accident that has affected his memory. The couple have come to the farmhouse in an attempt to regain Alex's ability to remember his past. Later that night, after putting Alex to sleep, Sophia sits down for a drink all by herself. Through a flashback, she remembers the day when the horrible accident changed Alex forever. She remembers having an argument with him on the roadside. Alex wanted to spend more time with her, but Sophia had to leave due to work emergencies. As he tried to stop her from entering her car, Sophia slightly pushed Alex. Unfortunately, just then, a truck rammed right across his head, causing severe damage to his brain and speech ability. That night, as she settles down to sleep by herself, the loud sound of a door closing catches her attention. After making sure Alex is still asleep, she looks around the villa to check for the source of the noise. Soon afterward, she realizes that the door to the attic is wide open. She reaches the attic and finds a huge painting covered under a white sheet. To her surprise, it is a vast portrait of someone who looks exactly like her husband Alex. However, the signature reads Calvin Dubose, 1937. Completely baffled, she calls her friend, telling her about the picture, and sends her a photo as well. As days pass by, Sophia makes every effort to revive Alex's memory. She brings out the family photo album, but he still doesn't remember anything. She then remembers the portrait in the attic and decides to check the person in the album as it had all the family members in it, even from decades ago. She finds a spot marked Calvin, but the space is empty. Curiously, Calvin's picture is missing from the album. Suddenly, a figure appears from behind, and Sophia almost screams in fear. But the woman introduces herself as Margaret and shows her picture from the album. She narrates to Sophia that it was her great-grandfather who had built the whole mansion. Margaret also reveals that he is fond of beautiful women and thinks that Sophia could have modeled for her grandfather. The two converse until it is time for Margaret to leave. As she is about to leave, she asks a very bizarre question that leaves Sophia startled. Margaret asks Sophia who she thought had come when she saw her. Sophia doesn't say anything, perhaps too confused to answer. Margaret then looks at the mansion, smiles awkwardly, and leaves. Later, Sophia spontaneously decides to go to the attic. There, she starts talking to the picture and informs it about Alex's health condition. Slowly, Sophia talks to the portrait like it is Alex and not someone from the past century. She starts staring into the man's eyes and finds herself in a trance. Suddenly, an object falls and breaks with a loud bang downstairs. It brings her out of the trance, and she immediately runs towards the source of the noise, finding Alex standing behind a broken statue. She then takes Alex back to his room and then returns to her room. Alex's great-grandfather, Calvin, has fascinated her, and she decides to check on Margaret. Sophia tells Margaret about her findings in the attic and shows her the picture on her phone. She expresses her opinion on the similarity between Calvin and Alex, but Margaret doesn't feel the same. Margaret tells Sophia that Calvin likes to hurt women. However, apart from his sadistic attitude, he was a genius and studied philosophy. He hired a house helper, became obsessed with her beauty, and painted her over and over again. When her husband passed away, he asked her to move in with him, but she was already in a relationship with a boy from her town. This made Calvin furious, and there, in front of her lover, he dragged her for miles and beat them both to death. Later, to everyone's surprise, Calvin had somehow vanished. Margaret believes that he had disappeared inside the portrait as it was still wet when the police arrived. But Sophia has never believed in spirits and ghosts and bids farewell to Margaret. That night, she falls asleep with Alex on his bed. When she wakes up, Alex has his arms around her. Sophia carefully removes his arm and walks away. She switches off the light on the porch, but as she turns around, she hears leaves crunching like someone is outside. Suddenly, there is a knock on the door, startling her. Esther, Margaret's girlfriend, is at the door and she has brought some news clippings from 1937. After reading those, Sophia realizes that the story Margaret told her was true. Still, according to the clippings, Calvin fled the country. Esther showed her some more clippings that highlighted the assassinations of many other people in the area. Furthermore, she adds that these victims were found in the house or ran away and later passed away accidentally. Esther claims that there were more casualties, but the family had covered them up before leaving. She looks deeply into Sophia's eyes and claims that Sophia has seen Calvin, which confuses her even more. Frustrated, Sophia asks Esther to leave. Meanwhile, Sophia goes upstairs, stands before the portrait, and starts talking to the man again. She touches the portrait, but it's dry. Suddenly, the figure from the portrait, Calvin, lunges at her from the portrait for a split second. Scared out of her wits, she steps back. As she regains her composure, she isn't even sure if it's reality or mere hallucinations. The next day, she takes Alex out for a drive. She asks if he remembers the songs playing in the car, but he keeps sitting like a statue with no emotions. After a while, she stops at the store for groceries, leaving Alex behind in the car. Out of the blue, Alex starts crying. Just then, a police officer named Jen arrives and asks if he's all right. It is revealed that Jen is somehow familiar with Alex. However, Alex is still crying as he exits the car and starts walking away. Officer Jen follows him and he punches her in the face. Thankfully, Sophia arrives to quell the trouble and apologizes to the officer as she takes Alex back to the car. Alex is breathless on their way back. Sophia seems tense, but Alex doesn't show any emotions. When they reach home, Alex fights with Mr. Brooks, which makes the housekeeper angry. Sophia quietly returns and places the groceries inside the cabinets. Alex sits on the floor, quiet now. Sophia joins him and tries to calm him down. She's desperate for him to show any signs of improvement. She even tells him she's about to give up if he doesn't. She asks him to give her a clue to help her out. Later that night, Mr. Brooks sits with Sophia, who offers him a drink. They start to chat and discuss Alex's situation. He shows her a tattoo that says God will help us all. In a surprising turn of events, Sophia tries to force herself on him, but he backs away. Brooks hugs her and Sophia goes to the kitchen. Her ego is bruised after being rejected and she feels furious for losing her self-respect. She switches off the lights and goes to look for Alex, finding him standing on the balcony. She approaches him and attempts to take him back to bed. Instead, he grabs her by the collar, pushes her on the floor with extreme force, and goes inside. Disoriented, she returns to her room, takes her meds, and goes to sleep. Later, when Sophia is sleeping, she dreams about Alex and Calvin and feels as if someone is choking her. When she wakes up from her dream, she finds bruises on her neck. Sophia approaches Alex, wakes him up, and tells him they are leaving. She resolves to admit Alex to the hospital as she feels like she's losing her mind too. But when she comes outside, she finds Mr. Brooks' truck while the front door of the truck is open. She tries to find him and comes across his deceased body nearby. Soon afterward, the cops arrive at the scene and investigate the brutal crime. Sophia narrates the whole story, but Officer Jen is suspicious about her husband. The cops tell Sophia that they will be taking Alex to the police station for investigation. If he is clear, he will be allowed to leave. Meanwhile, Sophia has to stay in town. Officer Jen would also be leaving a deputy at their place as she wants a full investigation of the case. She checks Alex's window and finds him standing before her. Later, Alex is shown standing before the portrait in the attic, screaming and crying. Meanwhile, Sophia is out for a run, crying on her way. Alex gazes outside while Sophia drowns her worries in alcohol. Her phone is ringing persistently, but she avoids it and keeps drinking. Alex looks at her with pity. That night, Sophia doesn't realize that she has slept on the couch. She dreams about Alex playing the piano. Suddenly, he looks at her and asks, "You did it?" This wakes up Sophia, who runs to the bathroom and throws up. Later, while she is bathing, she starts crying once more. Suddenly, she feels someone approaching her from behind, but sees no one when she turns around. Eerily, a figure appears behind her once more and forces itself upon her. She starts screaming, but the deputy officer outside is too deep in his sleep to hear her cries. Unable to handle the trauma, Sophia loses consciousness. When she eventually wakes up, she goes upstairs with a knife, screaming at the portrait. Suddenly, all the lights go out, leaving the room dark. When she looks at the portrait, it is empty, increasing the horror inside her. The knife drops from her hand and vanishes. Sophia immediately retreats and calls Alex's name. As she descends downstairs, she finds him at the doorway. But when she approaches him, he vanishes suddenly. He reappears, attacking her with a knife and stabs her multiple times, disappearing after every strike. Gravely injured, Sophia continues to search for him and finally finds him sitting on the floor. Instead of attacking him, she quickly runs to his aid. As she approaches, he stabs her again with a knife. Desperate to end this nightmare, Sophia grabs the knife from his hand and starts kissing him. Sophia figures out that Alex has been possessed by Calvin, so she stabs him in his back multiple times. This causes both of them to fall on the floor. The following day, Officer Jen and the sheriff arrive at the mansion. Inside, they find the husband and wife on the floor. Sophia is covered in blood but still alive, while Alex is no more. Following this, Sophia is arrested as the prime subject in the assassination of her husband. While she waits in jail, Margaret comes to meet her, and Sophia tells her exactly what happened. She tells Margaret that Calvin helped her kill Alex. Margaret, on the other hand, thinks Sophia has lost her grasp on sanity. In the final scene, Margaret auctions all the paintings that belong to Calvin. When the final painting, the self-portrait, is shown, a woman sitting beside her sick husband seems desperate to buy it. She keeps raising the money until the painting is hers. Strangely, when the self-portrait is shown, it does not resemble Alex anymore, but rather her sick husband. The moral of the story is that dwelling on the past, no matter how beautiful, can blind you to the present and future.